morning. This is the Focus on Parliament show on Civic Space TV, brought to you by the Center for Constitutional Governance. I am Kwagala, your host. Could Parliament employ the approach of the regional sittings as a strategy to restore public confidence and faith in the institution, and as a result, bring Parliament closer to the people of Uganda? Well, on this edition of Focus on Parliament, we explore these new changes to the operational framework of Parliament and discuss how it could likely impact the expectations of the Ugandan citizens going forward. Our viewers, you are once again most welcome to this program. I now have the pleasure and the privilege to introduce to you my panelists to help us discuss today's topic. Gentlemen, you are most welcome to the program.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Let me start with Mr. Burobuto, who is a senior colleague, I should say, but also now the executive director for the Progressive Youth Tank, a policy governance analysis institution, and also a parliamentary hopeful for Bushenyi municipality come 2026.
Amen.
You're most welcome to the program. Yam, say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, Isaac, especially for that blessing at the end. A pleasure to be here. Good morning to all our viewers out there.
Thank you. Mr. Chemonges Timothy is the Associate Director for the Parliament Watch and the Center for Policy Analysis. Timothy, you're most welcome to the program. Say hello to the viewers.
Thank you, Isaac. Good morning to our viewers. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having us. We are looking forward to a very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy. I'm going to start with you. Parliament seems to be walking a tightrope with these changes. There are strong voices of criticism which said this is a total waste of the taxpayers' money, given that at a bare minimum, Parliament is set to expend about 5 billion to organize each and every one of those sittings. Now, we are learning that a schedule has already been drawn, and these sittings are, I think, due to begin on the 17th, the first sitting in Gulu, up to the 20th of this month. What is your take on this from a standpoint of a policy analyst? Is this really the way to go?
Thank you, Isaac. The conversations around having, regional parliaments or parliaments operating within the regions is not a concept that is new in our dispensation. Immediately post the independence, there were conversations around establishing regional parliaments, especially the regions that had kingdoms that had already been established. That understanding that Uganda adopted a quasi-federal system immediately after the independence, and so there was push, but also the sort of discussions around then were how do we have the regional parliaments. Fast forward during the CA at the time when we were considering the new constitution, the 1995 constitution, if you look at the records, there were also undertones, but also there were conversations around how can Uganda embrace the question of regional parliaments, either as parliaments within the regions or having parliament as an institution establish its influence within the regions. And so I think that the impact, the quality, but also what the current discussions around having parliaments operate but also visit the different regions is something that must also be looked at from the bigger picture of the governance of today's of our country. That also must be looked at, and questions to be answered is if Parliament sat in Kampala, what are the likely impacts that is likely to have? I think we've had broader conversations and have bigger issues as far as how the question of independence of Parliament the ability to impact or make clear resolutions on the key issues affecting either the regions or specific issues that affect the country, broadly speaking. Regional parliaments, again, looking at it at a global level, is not a new phenomenon. We've had this in many countries, including South Africa. India has also adopted the regional parliament concept, and it seems to have worked there, although there are still issues as far as the costs and many other challenges that are in line with the outputs of these regional parliaments. Canada, UK have also adopted this sort of parliament, this sort of approach. And many times the desire and the objective is, how do we ensure that we address the question of regional imbalance? Ensure that the institution of parliament can serve as a focal of unity within the country, but also more importantly, ensuring that the issues that are arising from the different regions within the country can be given spotlight, but also addressed. I think that Uganda's new adopted approach, on whether it's going to work or not, it's on its ability to actually have the issues, whether it's in Kampala or otherwise, have them work. Parliament finds itself in a very, or has placed itself actually in a place that is very conspicuous and does not have the actual power to have things happen. As it stands today, the independence of Parliament is in great question as far as its ability to actually, effect a specific issue. Parliament's credibility on matters accountability, on protection of rule of law, on whether indeed it reflects the will of the people is something that is still debatable. And so there are bigger concerns. I think that at a bigger level, the idea of having regional parliament is a good idea. However, to have the actual outcome and fruits that can be realized from this regional parliament is something that also we may have to look at it, both in terms of how parliament is approaching it, but also more importantly, in light of what we would want to see. We have issues that different regions in the country face, and each has their own peculiar challenges. And so whether Parliament indeed can be able to address most of those challenges or even give attention to most of those is something that is still in question. Because Parliament sitting in Kampala has not effectively addressed most of these issues. And that goes to the extent of being able to hold the executive accountable. Because as you know, Parliament has its mandate clearly stipulated within the Constitution. And so they are supposed to hold the executive accountable to have most of these things that they wish to happen be executed. And so we have a big challenge, especially within our governance system, where Parliament as it is now cannot effectively hold the executive accountable, let alone demanding for what is right within the different regions. We've recently concluded the process of the budget, and you saw the president raising concerns of how Parliament considered some of the priorities that government had. I think the president returns the appropriation bills back to Parliament, and the Parliament adheres to what the president had requested. Notwithstanding that, at the point of consideration in the first place of the allocations within the budget, Parliament was exercising its mandate. And if Parliament thought that is the direction they ought to take, they enjoy a bit of independence. Okay, of course, there has to be a mechanism which the sitting government can, continuously having checks and balances and closely work with the different arms of Parliament, of arms of government. But it's ability to independently take decisions, but also hold the executive accountable. And so, on whether the current approach that Parliament has adopted is likely to yield results, I don't think so. It's still an issue. On the question of accountability, and the resources, as you've mentioned, I think it's a question that if you look at all the other regional parliaments that have been implemented across the world, as those I've mentioned, India, UK, Canada, South Africa has also taken the approach. The question of accountability and resources still comes out, but that must be looked at within the bigger picture of how Parliament utilizes its resources. Parliament has slightly below 1 trillion of its budget, and if you calculate the total, the amount of money that Parliament would be using in a day would come around 3 billion. So if the proposed or what is being suggested, because we do not have the actual figure that is actually going to be spent in each of these sittings, the figure that we have at hand, which may not be conclusive, is around 5 billion.
It's an estimate.
It's an estimate, yeah. So when the Parliament spends that money in the regional parliament, or it saves it for other programs, it will still either be used in other things. So I think that the question of accountability is a bigger question on how Parliament utilizes its resources, but also its attitude towards the question of accountability and transparency.
Thank you, Tim, for your perspective. Jonathan, this seems to be a tough balancing act for Parliament, and clearly two schools of thought seem to be emerging. The first is that this is a national assembly. Therefore, it should prioritize a discussion that pertains to national issues. And it has a central meeting location, which is the Parliament buildings in Kampala. And therefore, there is no need for members of Parliament to endure those long treks to go to regional venues to have those discussions, which in any case pertain to the whole country, the entire breadth and length of the country. Then the second school of thought, on the other hand, seems to advocate for a more pointed focus on regional issues. So the question I want to ask you as a citizen, from your point of view, does this really make sense? Because in the Constitution, the Parliament is the National Assembly for the whole country. It doesn't matter if it still maintains those sittings in Kampala, and then they entertain all the issues emerging from each and every corner of the country, and then they actually, offer solutions to the issues. So, from a citizen's point of view, what's your reaction to this proposal?
One, thank you for that question. I must also say that I am glad to share the platform with Mr. Chemonges here. It's been quite a while since we had interaction. We have a history with our law school at Makerere University, so it's nice to see you.
Thank you.
And thank you for the great work that you're doing with colleagues at Parliament Watch. Please keep it up.
Thank you.
On the question that you've asked, Isaac, and to begin it there, I was watching, I don't know, somewhere, and there was a member of Parliament on the panel who was saying that moving the Parliament across the regions of the country will enable Parliament to listen more appropriately to the issues of those regions. So I was wondering that when these parliaments sit in those regions, will the spirits of those regions possess the members of Parliament so that they speak those issues within those regions? They cannot speak to the issues of different regions across our country in Kampala, that they have to move to a particular region, tap into the spirits of that region so that they are now able to air out the issues of that region. I found that reason quite absurd, because I mean, even if it's an attempt to try and give special time to a particular region, that can still be done in Kampala. You can simply say, like they are now saying, that these 3 days, and I think it's 29th to 30th, 28th to 30th, not 17th to 20th. So that these 3 days are for this particular region. it can also be done in Kampala, where they simply say this whole week we shall be debating issues pertaining the northern region, pertaining the greater southern region, pertaining the central region, pertaining the eastern region. So it doesn't necessarily need to spend 5 billion or whichever amount it will be to move to a region to speak to those particular issues. But also it's sort of a discredit on the parliament itself that it cannot speak nationally because it's sitting in Kampala, that it needs to move to all parts of the country to therefore have a semblance of a national appreciation of the issues pertaining the citizens across the country. It's quite baffling. But like Chemonges said here, the attempt would be welcome, because I think the attempt is to try and posture the parliament as a people's parliament, bring it close to the ordinary person. But you see, it's also due to the failure of this parliament to do what they are supposed to do within the house to make the public and the nation indeed appreciate that their parliament is the people's parliament, by addressing the issues that are close to them. Issues of health, lack of drugs in hospitals, good quality education. You've had, currently we are looking at this issue of interns. They cannot be placed, and people are dying in hospitals across the country because they are lacking about 18 billion to have that placement across the country, when we are giving over 300 billion to companies whose owners we don't know, Rocco, and then Day Group of pharmaceuticals, I think, is here doctor now, Mr. Magola. So these issues would ideally endear the public, the citizenry, to trust, and they would give credibility to the parliament. What the administration of parliament is trying to do, and with all due respect, the senior administrators of the current parliament are highly populist leaders. What they are trying to do is to attempt to, it's a populism card, to really try and pretend that they are considering the issues of the Wananchi, therefore they're even coming nearer to where they are to try and understand their issues much better. But really, the leaders understand that our citizenry is still gullible, especially within the spread areas of our country, nearer the borders. So they know that for an ordinary citizen, not a Chemonges, not a Yam, not an Isaac, will feel so happy to see the parliament sit in Gulu. And to be honest, if it was a parliament that was for the people in the real sense of it, I personally would be happy to drive my grandmother all the way from Mushenyi to Mbarara to come and see the parliament that is doing wonders for the country. I would, for one, I would volunteer to move to my village in Mushenyi, pick my very elderly uncle, drive him to Mbarara and tell him, Uncle, this is the parliament that is doing us wonders in our country, that is ensuring that we have drugs in hospitals, that is ensuring that we have quality education, that is ensuring that we have proper roads, that is ensuring that policies that government is coming up with are geared towards mitigating the unemployment scourge that is affecting the greater youthful population. I would be proud to associate with such an agenda. But this parliament does not have that, and it is simply an attempt to play a populist card within the country to try and endear themselves to the population. It's more of a brand cleansing, considering what they've gone through over time. But the idea in itself wouldn't be a bad one. If it were the parliaments of the great parliamentarians they talk about. There were Pakabulos, there are Diokne Chons, the Cecilia Gwals, may her soul rest in peace, the late Abu Mayanjas. That's the parliament that, you know, the Wananchis would I think want to come and see. But in this parliament of ours now, whom do you go to see really as a beacon of performance in the parliament? The late Abu Mayanja, even those parliaments, you can imagine. One time he described his colleagues as ignorant, monumentary, dense, one-track-minded members of parliament. So if I would want to endear myself to such a parliament, but that was his verdict of his colleagues, I shrink to imagine how he would describe the current members of parliament if that is the kind of description he could give to that parliament then that we all seem to admire. Yeah, so I simply think that it's a good endeavor that is being attempted by the wrong crop of leaders.
With regard to the cost of these proposed regional sittings, an estimated cost of 5 billion to conduct a sitting in one regional center, let's say Gulu, let's say Mbarara or Masaka. As a citizen, because we understand, of course, this comprises of the total budgetary framework of Parliament for the financial year, and Timmy has made a very good argument that we should not look at it simplistically. If we are to interrogate the aspect of accountability, then let us look at the entire budget for the Parliament, which is close to $1 trillion. But does it make sense? Is it a question of really cost that maybe a certain section of the citizenry and members of Parliament are opposed to it because of the cost or because the expectations won't be met? What is the real issue?
I think that, and I was following the session the other day, and I don't remember the member of opposition who raised the issue about the cost, and the deputy speaker who was chairing the session said it is not 5 billions. What I found interesting is that he didn't go ahead to therefore mention what the real cost is. He only said it wasn't 5 billion, but he didn't go ahead to give the member information, because I would want to think that as a deputy speaker, considering what the issues Parliament has been going through, that should be information that is, you know, in his grasp, that since the member has come up to try and allege that it's about 5 billion, it would have been in his own best interest as a senior administrator of the institution to actually give the exact figure. But the fact that he shied away from mentioning the figure, for me, leaves a lot to to speculate. But anyway, nonetheless, that wouldn't be an issue. Again, like I said, the idea to move Parliament to the regions wouldn't be a bad one in the general sense of things. I agree with Timothy. But not this Parliament. This Parliament and its leadership is simply using that as a populism agenda to try and cleanse their bad image at the moment. But there would be a young man, a young boy, maybe P3, S1, P5, S5, who would be inspired to see that the Parliament is in Gulu, that it could just be a spark, that those 3 days, that moment, that young guy will come nearer to a semblance of a national assembly, could inspire him to become such a great leader for this country, that it could take simply such a gesture for us to inspire somebody who could become great and perhaps shift the prospects of this country in such a major way. These symbolisms are not are not light. They are heavy. They can be heavy in certain ways. They can be priceless in that sense. That the 5 billion could inspire a young girl, a young man who could later become a great leader of this country and help us become much, much better. So I would want to agree with Chemonges to a certain extent, because in any essence, they will still have sat in Kampala. There would still be a cost to the sessions anyway. Only that I'm sure there will be a sort of an increase in the cost, because now there is accommodation of members of parliament, there is transport allowance and things like that. But in the general sense of things, the cost wouldn't have been an issue. But any cost on this particular parliament is a regrettable one. Yeah.
Thank you, Yam, for your thoughts. Tim, isn't it time that we really reimagine the governance architecture of this country? Because these proposals raise very interesting questions for the governance outlook of the country. Come to think about it, if Uganda were, for example, a federal state, then we would have a proper framework where power is developed from the central authority, that is the National Assembly as parliament, to perhaps regional parliaments. And then all those other remote issues, regional issues, would be properly discussed in that forum. And then issues that perhaps have a national outlook in character could be escalated to parliament for resolution. So don't you think that if we were to broadly interrogate this proposal like you have recommended, it is high time that we really advocated?
Yeah, so how Parliament operates, notwithstanding any futuristic sort of parliament that we desire, is that it operates through largely committees, for which resolution or any items that are considered in there are subsequently, approved or disapproved within the plenary sessions. Now, the way the committees really operate, they have a chance to visit all the areas of interest, depending on what matter they are looking at across the country. And so most of these committees get the chance to, visit the different parts of the country. As to whether the issues that they raise are actually taken into consideration, that's an item that subject to debate, but most of them are not considered. Two, in light of whether it matters to an ordinary citizen as to whether parliament sits here, or you have a devolved system, or you have one sitting in wherever, I think it doesn't matter to an ordinary. It doesn't matter where parliament is sitting. What matters is that are the services being delivered to them? Is the healthcare functioning? Is the education working? In fact, if you actually look at the concerns of the citizens, it's beyond who is leading which ministry, who is serving where, when, all those kind of things. It's to the extent of service delivery. And I think we have challenges, yes, in terms of governance, and which is the biggest problem that the country is facing. That today we can look into the question of corruption, and that literally the whole government, including the executive, are part and parcel of all this process. They are beneficiaries, and so it becomes a bit of a hard, it's a hard question to answer. So to the extent that Parliament does not focus on the needs of the people, where it sits is immaterial. Whether they sit in
should be material.
It should be material. The ultimate driving force, as they champion and seem to present themselves as a people-centered parliament, is that what are the needs and the concerns of the people? Are the service delivery? Are they being delivered? Definitely no. Are the resources that the country have being utilized well? Definitely no. We have structural, and just parliament itself. You know why parliament actually attracts a lot of focus is sometimes because it's a center on reflection of who the people are, and they are charged with the mandate of representing the views of the people. And every time Parliament comes up with a position is to the extent that it is expected these are the views, the aspiration of the people. And at all times, Parliament must be a true reflection of the people. Is that true with the current Parliament? Most definitely no. In terms of the let's say the structure within Parliament, the numbers of members of Parliament, I know it's a constitutional matter. Again, most likely we are going to have more members of Parliament in the coming election, not because of anything, but because it's a constitutional demand that every time there's an increase of population, then a new constituency is established, which is a constitutional issue. But more importantly, I think the current Parliament has put itself in a very peculiar space, that it has chosen to measure on minor and major, and minor on major. And maybe the other thing is that it will be good for us to look at the timing of this regional parliament and to ask why is it that Parliament chose to have the regional parliaments at this specific point in time. They're in their fourth session, 1 year to go, and they go home. So it will tell you that Parliament in the recent past has also faced quite a number of challenges in terms of its credibility, in terms of its ability to resonate, but also to speak to the needs of the people. And so there's a bit of challenge there, and I absolutely agree with the perception that Parliament seems to be putting a public stand and to present itself as an institution that speaks for the people, while in true sense, it's most likely they have not served their purpose. And so we hope, and most likely, if the current structure does not change, Parliament may not and will not continue serving its true purpose, to have the people at the center of its decisions. Yeah.
Thank you, Timothy. Focus on Parliament now takes a short break. When we return, we continue the discourse on the proposed regional sittings of Parliament. See you back shortly.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back. This is the Focus on Parliament show on Civic Space TV. In this segment, we continue the discussion on whether the proposed regional sittings of Parliament can somewhat reform the operational outlook of Parliament and in the process bring the Parliament closer to the Ugandan people. Timothy, again, let me start with you. In terms of the expectations, what would you say that these regional sittings of Parliament could achieve?
No, I think it's safer to deal with no expectations. Maybe we should be shocked with any if it comes. But also more importantly is to also looking at some of those that have been presented by Parliament to ensure that you bring Parliament closer to the people. So in an ideal setting where you have a very sober Parliament that can effectively address the issues that are at hand, the regional parliaments need to be very well planned, well structured, and the issues that are going to be addressed clearly put out. So that then by the time parliament leaves a specific, a specific region, there are sort of tangible outcomes that have been realized. And what that looks like is that in terms of an impact here may be both economic issues that are facing the specific region, but also more importantly, ensuring that the people within that region have a sense of feeling of being closer and appreciate how Parliament operates, how Parliament does its work, but also the desire of, at all point in time, be closer to your representatives. Create a platform where people feel heard, where people see that our representative can be able to, are people who listen to our concerns. But the current structure and the current systems, partly looking at it from the overall structure in terms of the independence of the institution, where they can actually effect and push for actual changes, I think that is lacking. In terms of structural, in terms of how the current regional parliaments are being organized, there is likely to be very limited outcome to be realized, partly because of the approach that looking at the other regional parliaments is that you see a lot of pre-engagements before the actual parliament. You have committees going to sit there. You have
ahead of the actual regional sittings.
Yes, so the sittings are really apex, and they just come to crystallize really what has already been, and including some of those issues. You have the local governments coming together. You have issues within the local governments. You have discussions arising right from the start of the budget process, so that all this is clearly budgeted for. The executive is part and parcel of this to ensure that the issues that affect the people in those regions, by the time Parliament leave that region, those issues have been clearly addressed. However, the current structure seems to be a shift of simply sitting and debating from one place to another, which does not really present an actual change. Because if it's going to be, if it's issues that we are looking at, it should be that Parliament goes to look into the specific issues and not a change of place of sitting, so that there are clear resolutions that come out of that, out of the specific sittings, and so it's quite clear. And so, looking at how the structure and the approach that is being taken currently, at just structural level, you see that there's a lot lacking, notwithstanding the overall picture of even Parliament's ability, Parliament's capacity to actually effect change and ensure that there are quite a number of changes that happen in those regions.
To further contextualize the discussion, these proposals are coming in the wake of serious accountability questions and calls regarding the conduct of Parliament, both for the leadership but also the institution as a whole. And I think recently, should be this week, where the Honorable Sech Kubo, the lead proponent of the move to censure the 4 parliamentary commissioners that were implicated in the corruption scandal regarding the 1.7 improper service award saga, where he has confirmed to the country that he has now crossed the threshold of the required signatures to present that motion before the House of Parliament. Could this be perhaps one of the items for consideration in those sittings? And if it plays out, speaking of surprises,
no, I did not know you to be very witty and humorous, but that's a very good attempt at being very humorous, to be honest. I don't know how you felt asking that question, but as you finished it, it's just that I am on TV. I am trying to hold myself back, but it's such a moment to laugh out loud. And I'm sure many Ugandans out there feel the same. Because if anything, I hope, well, the surprise will be if that motion ever saw do they say the light of day? If it ever saw the light of day, I really hope, and it would be such a miracle for me at an individual basis. So I doubt that in an attempt to be populist and posture as a people-centered parliament, that they would destroy their public stand with such emotion for discussion in some of these regional, in any of these regional attempts at having the National Assemblies there. If anything, I am doubtful it will see the flow of parliament even when
Anywhere.
it is in Kampala. Yeah, but well, you never know. The world is full of surprises, like you say. I think it's Bobi Wine that said since parliament refused to go to the ghetto, in essence, since they have refused to check the executive to ensure that in the grander scheme of things, they are able to deliver at least at a bare minimum. There is no government world over that can deliver 100% and reach to every other citizen, but an attempt must be seen that you're doing all efforts to try and at least hit that idea. So the point he was making was that he said that therefore the ghetto would move to parliament. So I think that now that people are starting to march to parliament, though unfortunately parliament has realized late, in an attempt to stop marchers coming from Gulu, from Masaka, from Mbale,
To march on parliament.
from Mbarara to march on parliament. Perhaps parliament is adhering to Bobi Wine's advice to now run to the to the people, but though rather symbolically, because he didn't mean that they should shift the assemblies to the regions, but rather undertake effort to try and address the issues of service delivery that Chemonges articulately highlighted. So it's that bad for me, and it's unfortunate that taxpayers' money continues to be wasted by this particular parliament in that kind of sense. Yeah.
Timothy, let us spotlight the leadership of parliament itself. And I think it was Young who earlier on said that the approach that parliament has taken to most of the national issues has in a sense discredited its leadership. But focusing on the proposed regional sittings, we have a clearly disjointed leadership in parliament. The speaker and the deputy on one hand seem to be very vigorous advocates of this new arrangement. On the other hand, the leader of the opposition is mobilizing his troops to give this arrangement a wide berth and just stay away from the entire process, reasoning that it is not something that I think can facilitate some sort of solution to any of the pressing issues that affect the citizenry of the country. So what does this have to tell us? If at all these sittings were to happen, and then we simply have a singular representation from the broader political spectrum in the country, would that really augur well in terms of both the reputation but also the ability of parliament to galvanize political support together and do something for the citizens?
Yeah, thank you. So there seems to be increasingly a leadership crisis in parliament. And parliament...
Across board.
Across board. So parliament...
By that you mean in the opposition as well?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Certainly.
So there is a leadership crisis. And within the institution itself, the parliamentary commission actually takes... is the apex institution within parliament, and should be able to offer leadership, make decisions on behalf of the institution. As it stands now, we see that the leader of opposition comes out to raise concern, is never invited, is never informed of the commission sitting, and there seems to be decisions being taken. Now, what that means also is that there seems to be interest that either of the sides feels maybe frustrated by either side. And so you notice that even within the institution itself, there are challenges in terms of leadership. Looking at the leadership, both on the leader on the opposition side and these other leaders, you see there's a crisis in terms of having a very clear and objective direction that the country wants. One of the biggest challenges that we face, not within Parliament itself, broadly speaking, is the question of leadership. The country is lacking proper leadership that can inspire hope, can inspire, that can give confidence to the people that we are definitely headed in the right direction.
What underlies what is underlying that perception?
Maybe to jump in. I think to try and answer, to give an opinion on the question you've asked, Chemonges, I think even when I understand where the leader of opposition is coming from, but I thought that in a strategic sense, the opposition has lost an opportunity to make their case in these regional parliaments if they decide to boycott all of them. If I was the leader of opposition, after stating our position that ideally we wouldn't be supporting this idea because of the reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but the opportunity that lies therein, we will try and undertake it because our endeavor is to try and sensitize and conscientize the population as much as we can about why the more they vote this particular party into power, the more their issues will not be addressed. I would go to northern Uganda in Parliament in Gulu, let them know that, you see, regarding your issues 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we raised it on the floor of Parliament, but this government did not even care to listen or address them. Now, the challenge is that even when we try our best as opposition to bring these issues that affect your region to the floor, we are done bad by the numbers. It's up to you, the people, who continue to vote this party into power that doesn't care about you, to vote them out, so that for us who care about you by the show of how they raise these issues in the House, we take over and are able to address these issues for you. I think it would have been a much smarter, more strategic move by the opposition. Go in those regional assemblies and make your case to the population there. So for me, when he says there is a leadership crisis, I would want to see it from that kind of angle, because they are playing Mickey Mouse with each other, Mickey Mouse games in the leadership of Parliament with each other at the greater expense of the citizen. Yeah. So for me, that's how I would have approached it really, and I think that the opposition would have scored more in that kind of way than boycotting, because you see, our citizenry is still extremely gullible, and our government and the state are serious propagandists, that they are now spinning this whole thing as if the opposition does not care about the issues of the North, and that is why they have they have boycotted the session. And it remains to be seen whether they will boycott all the others. But now that they have started this, if they go ahead to boycott the one of the northern region, strategically, even when I think it's a blunder, they would have to boycott all the others. But they would have missed out on an opportunity to make their case in those assemblies, in my view.
Timothy, My question, what is underlying that perception of a serious crisis in leadership, especially at Parliament? Because you've pointed out the apex decision-making body, the Parliamentary Commission. Its composition is clear, well-defined in the act that provides for the operations of Parliament. So why do key stakeholders keep on reading from different scripts?
So I think that there is overwhelming, there is an overwhelming nature of interest that underlies most of these things, both on the side of the opposition, but also on the side of government, but also the lack of very clear accountability structures and systems, both within Parliament and government broadly, are greatly compromised. And so what that presents is that it creates provides a very fertile ground for impunity, but also provides an environment where the leaders who have these positions do not are a bit detached with the interest of the people, because at the end of the day there is really nothing that will happen. Looking, for example, the questions of accountability in the recent past that have been raised about Parliament, and those that that came up during the exhibition. So there was glaring and overwhelming evidence that could be disputed, but there is information which, by the way, has not been disputed substantially by the institution of Parliament, in how resources are used, in how staff are employed in Parliament, but broadly speaking, in terms of how Parliament operates. There's not really much that has actually happened, or the government institutions that are responsible either to even step in and ensure that there could be investigations, there could be heads rolling here and there. There's really nothing. It's business as usual. We've now moved from the misuse of resources as it were then. We are now discussing an extended misuse of resources now at a regional level. We are likely to find ourselves in the next conversation where resources by the same leaders are being misused.
Yes.
So it's the same resources, same leaders, but it's different. So with that sort of direction, let's give another example. The Auditor General's report giving a very clear directions on how resources are being used in the country, but also you notice that Parliament seems to enjoy a very special place on the Auditor General's report. There is no very clear audit and focus that is given to the institution of Parliament, partly because the Auditor General is considered to be, an
office of Parliament,
an office of Parliament, a part of Parliament, and so then you find that maybe there are a couple of many things that that are likely to go without check. But we are facing a bigger problem in light of institutions and their ability to effectively execute their mandate, partly because of the polarization of the politics. There are also concerns around the executive, and there have been discussions, why would we as Ugandans focus on an institution that literally receives less than $1 trillion shillings? Yet we have almost a projected 72 trillion that we should be focusing on. Let's say now 71 or thereabout. I know others will be going towards debt repayment and the rest. It's because the institution that actually we are focusing on has the constitutional mandate in terms of disbursement of these resources, 2, in terms of providing oversight for how those resources are used, for how our institutions are operating, but also, more importantly, they enjoy a very special position of ensuring that the people's aspirations, people's desire reflect in all decisions that they take. And to the extent that does not appear in things that they do, it only tells you that there is a falling short. But also, more importantly, I think that progressively you will notice that the quality of leadership of Parliament has deteriorated.
Yes.
Yam earlier was highlighting the caliber of speakers that we had previously. There were Pakabulos, and all the others, all the other great leaders that we had. Part of the unique is not that they didn't have their shortfalls really. Yeah, they had, but their ability to execute their mandate within the envisaged constitutional mandate that they had without compromise is something that put them up there. Today, you can hardly distinguish the legislature and the executive. They are one and the same.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate that actually Parliament has placed itself to be in a very vulnerable position. That every cough by the executive, the legislature catches cold. So Parliament, to that end, is compromised and may not take any firm and actual positions in the interest of any other person other than the executive, who again seem to have overwhelming power, overwhelming mandate that the legislature has to at all times. So they're in a very weird position, and that is what affects their ability to execute their mandate, but also serve the people in a more objective and open manner.
Do you agree with Yam's assessment that despite the overt objections of the leader of opposition, urging his troops not to participate in the proposed regional sittings, he should nonetheless go ahead, just for the sake of, projecting to the Ugandan people that the opposition has a point in discrediting and pointing out some of the key failures of government.
So
just to cripple the public stand balloon.
Yes, to puncture it.
Yeah. So because the opposition has made their point very clearly, and to that end, it is fair that they also get the opportunity, to be part of this process. The NRM side or the other side of those that are going to participate in this process, they are going to have their way. So we need an opportunity. The opposition needed an opportunity, and I hope maybe they are reconsidering that, to ensure that they are part and parcel of this process, to ensure that they take up the opportunity that is there. At the end of the day, is that our democratic dispensation is work in progress, and it is not. It's not a one-off. That after you've not attended a specific session, then the public. So I think this is a great opportunity for the opposition and for the NRM side, depending on whichever side you're looking at, for both of them to go and engage with the different group of people. There could be issues in terms of accountability, which have been put out very clearly, but also utilize those platforms that are already there to raise those concerns of accountability, raise concerns of all the other. But I think there are better ways the opposition could have handled this, as opposed to to outrightly saying they won't attend.
As we move towards the closure of the program, does it concern you that the new approach that the Parliament has now adopted with respect to its sittings, of conducting regional sittings, could become a new normal for the Ugandan Parliament as its official operational framework? And if so, because now, like Timothy pointed out earlier, he said it would be simplistic to focus on the financial aspect of this program. But maybe if Parliament, I am supposing, if Parliament were to officially adopt this, then issues regarding logistics, issues regarding, of course, allowances, issues regarding, suitable spaces to hold these meetings, the venue, and whatnot, they would really become serious considerations, because this is some sort of experiment. So we might be rather tolerant to some of the things here and there, but in future, it would become a very serious issue. So does it concern you that this could actually become the official policy of Parliament with respect to its conducting business?
Yeah, maybe just before I get to that question, on the issue of the underlying situation in Parliament, and I think that Timothy talked about it just a little bit, the quality of our members of Parliament in the House. And the bigger problem, he talked about interests of both sides, but there's also interests of the individuals themselves on whichever side they are as members of Parliament. The population is not, the levels of consciousness are not to a reasonable level where we could therefore have reasonably more quality leaders emerge. And it's therefore the obligation and duty and responsibility of all those who think that change should happen to make their effort to conscientize the citizenry, the public, at whatever opportunity they have. Because you see, the quality of our members of Parliament come from us. We are the ones sending them into Parliament. So it speaks to how we exercise our freedom of choice in terms of which member of Parliament are we sending into the House. Now, the member of Parliament buys a vote. You see, it's not that Timothy said they are detached. No, they are not detached. They just don't care. But they know the issues of their people. So, but you see, they have bought yes, but you see, they have bought the vote with 1,000. The MP clearly knows that really this 1,000 is not going to help this individual, but plays on the gullibility of the voter, gives him the 1,000 brand new from the bank. The voter goes away happy, not knowing that they have sold their drugs in the hospital, they have undermined the quality of education they are going to receive, they have undermined the standards of the roads. So the voter, the citizen, must be conscientized every other time, at every other given opportunity. Those of us that have a bit of exposure and knowledge about the evils of what our fellow elites are doing to our nation. And it's therefore responsibility of each and everyone in that category to do their part in continuing to build the numbers of that consciousness, so that then we can have a little bit more quality members of Parliament in the House. Perhaps then that can elevate the credibility of the House to a more people-centered House. Now, the issue that you ask, am I alive to the fact that it could become a normal operation mechanism of the House? Believe me, that this issue of rotating the Parliament within the regions will not stop with this financial year. Even in the next year, they will now still go to these regions, but in a different district. It's going to continue, I can assure you, because it's a very good publicity stunt that even the president himself, no wonder he did not stop it. He's in for it, regard that he might even open the session in Gulu. But you see, I don't think it can become like the normal way of proceeding for the National Assembly. It would be absurd, because we are about to finish a new chamber for Parliament. So if they adopted that as the normal process, really, all the money we have put into that building, into that infrastructure, to try and have more space for members of Parliament, it would be absurd. But again, I must note that I wouldn't be shocked by taking from the way this government behaves. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened, but it would be such an absurd scenario. Yeah.
Tim, your closing remarks on the program respecting the topic of the day.
Yeah, so thank you so much, and I should be able to thank to our viewers and also the public for always sparing time, sparing a bit of data to to watch this. This is a very critical discussion that we must be able to have, but also more importantly, continuously hold the leaders that we have accountable. And that is only possible if we appreciate, but also closely follow and understand what's happening in the country. The leaders that we put in these positions, they exercise that mandate on our behalf. And therefore, it is our responsibility at all times to ensure that we are able to demand for accountability. And also, more importantly, is that all accountability systems are as good as its checks and balances. And to this end, the citizens are the only sustainable and the best option for holding the current leadership accountable. We are now heading towards the general elections. And what that looks like is that the citizens have the mandate. We shouldn't provide an opportunity where we are bringing to, we are giving mandate to leaders that shouldn't be in the first place given to this mandate. We should not allow to be corrupted. We hold the mandate, we should be able to participate and ensure that the leaders that we bring should be those that represent, but also hold our aspiration in the highest regard. Those that have betrayed the cause, definitely, that should be a thing that they shouldn't be given an opportunity. And lastly, I think that Parliament within our current dispensations holds a very special position, and it's fair and it's proper that we should be able to understand what their mandate is, and at all times ensure that we can hold them accountable to those lines of accountability. And Parliament is largely charged with 4 major mandates, which the first is around making laws, on that is legislation. And so they're charged with the mandate of ensuring that they can make laws for the good governance of the country, for the peace, and for, ensuring that the people are the center of these decisions. The other is around budgeting and ensuring that the resources that we have are clearly distributed. There are clear mechanisms where these resources can be got, but also, there is a fair mechanism of distributing these resources, which is their clear mandate. And at all times, we should be able to encourage them, but also hold them accountable. The other is around representation, which is being able to voice our concerns, the people's needs, the people's aspiration at all times on the floor of Parliament, and for which they should demand and continue ensuring that the executive hears what the people have. The last mandate is around oversight, ensuring that after executing all these other mandates, what has been put in place working? Are the resources that we've been able to appropriate or distribute in the different areas of the country, is there value for money? Are they being used rightly? Are the laws being implemented as they should be? And so oversight, another key mandate of Parliament, which we should be able to appreciate, but also again encourage them and hold them accountable to that end. But other than that, I think mine is to thank you, thank the viewers, and also thank Yam for the good show. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for your thoughts. Yam, your closing remarks on the program.
Thank you, our viewers. Hopefully you've had a wonderful morning with us. We hope that the views and opinions we share here will enrich you, and will appreciate the feedback that you would share with us, so that they make us better in our perceptions and views. Lastly, I want to let Ugandans know, fellow Ugandans know, that government are mere guardians of our resources. They are not the owners of these resources. And it's therefore everybody's responsibility, every citizen's obligation, to try and use every opportunity to have a concerted voice in agitating for proper use of these resources. These resources include your taxes, and our mineral resources. If we do not speak together as a citizenry in protection of these resources, we are doomed as a country. But lastly, I want to tell you, do not lose hope. Like one of our national leaders whom I admire says, like day follows night, we will overcome. On a lighter note, I wish the best Manchester team the best of the day later on in the day. Thank you very much.
That could be hard called, but thank you for sharing your perspectives with us. Yeah, I am certain Timothy wants to rebut that.
No, I can't rebut. I just need to compliment because we this week had very exciting news from our athletes in the Olympics, and they are doing an excellent work to put the country up there.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that while the others who are doing excellent work, there's a group of those that we've given mandate and they're disappointing us.
Yeah.
But it's to thank them and to really congratulate them. Thank you.
I must appreciate you, gentlemen, Timothy Chemonges and Burobuto, for your able participation on this program.
Pleasure
and
always.
Also for your sound patriotic guidance to the citizenry out there. Once again, this is the Focus on Parliament show on Civic Space TV. Much appreciation to you, our esteemed viewers, for keeping us company from the startup to the conclusion of this program. Much appreciation to the production unit for keeping us live on air. Please, our dear viewers, you can engage us on our various social media platforms. We are on X, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram. You can subscribe and watch this show on our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.